Welcome to the farmhouse. I am back for another tutorial on how to make raw milk kefir. Kefir is a product that you may have heard about. It may be something you've looked into for your family. Today, I'm going to take you into a very simple setup that I use to make kefir on an ongoing basis and to explain to you some of the benefits that are included with raw milk kefir. Kefir is very much like yogurt, and in consistency it tends to be a little thinner, but the benefit of kefir is that it contains different strains of bacteria and yeasts, the good kind of yeasts, that go to recolonize the gut. Yogurt contributes to the probiotics in your gut while it's being passed through your digestive system, but kefir helps to repopulate your gut in the case of recovery from antibiotics. Kefir is really good for those who are suffering from Crohn's disease and other bowel-related issues because it's adding to the flora of your gut and enhancing that, and it's becoming a part of your digestive system. So whereas yogurt passes through, kefir helps to maintain and rebuild. Kefir is one of the oldest forms of cultured dairy products. It has been said to have come from Russia or somewhere in the East and has been passed on as what they call the champagne of dairy. So if you think of high class beverage, something that you would enjoy in a very fine dining experience, kefir is that in the dairy world. Cultures didn't used to have refrigeration for their dairy products, and fermented and cultured dairy has been a part of preserving dairy products without refrigeration. So kefir is created at room temperature. There's no heating of the milk necessary. Different temperatures of the ambient space will contribute to faster or slower culturing. Today, we're going to make a batch of kefir, taking from a batch that has just finished culturing, and then I'll show you how we strain out the grains and what we're looking for, some of the tips and tricks that I use for making a really consistent batch of kefir from time to time. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to show you what I use for tools, basically a plastic colander that works well and a rubber scraper. The plastic colander is easy to keep it sanitized. It is easy to remove the grains after you've strained them out of the kefir, and a stock pot to catch and hold your colander. The other tool you would want is just an empty container to put the milk kefir into, and you will be reusing the jar that you cultured your kefir in. I'm going to be jumping into the middle of a batch. Once we get this strained, then I'll show you how to start with grains that are a fresh batch. Okay, so I'm just going to take my kefir here, and as you'll see, this kefir has been separated a little bit, but there's a good solid curd in it as well. I prefer to only strain kefir that has been refrigerated so that it's cold. That way, when I strain it, I'm not separating any more than I have to, which happens when you use warm kefir. So here I'm pouring it into the colander, and as we get to about full, you'll notice it's not coming through the colander particularly well. So I'm just going to make like a circular motion and scrape that colander, pressing the curd through the strainer and down into the stock pot. By pressing on it, we'll be working the kefir out from around the grains, and we'll be left with the starter grains in the strainer when we're done. I'm just using a circular motion. And if you notice in the bottom, there's typically more curd and more grains that accumulate. So if you want to, you can leave them in the bottom of the jar. I know some people that do it that way. I prefer to take them all out and put fresh milk around them so that they get a chance to be refreshed with a new batch of dairy. All right, so I'm scraping the back of the colander. I am left here with the grains. Now this is an extremely large amount of grains. I've been reusing these grains since they were a tablespoon, and they've populated and multiplied. And I have enough grains that I could start probably 6 or 10 different batches of kefir if I wanted to. So at this time, there is plenty of extra. I will just put them all back in because I have no need to separate it at this time. We could discard it, or if you want to start creating kefir of your own, we would be happy to pass on some grains to you. All right, so I've got about probably a cup and a half or 2 cups of grains, which is way more than you need. About a tablespoon I find to be a good amount to start with. Over time, your grains will keep multiplying and you can subdivide them and create more and more batches of kefir. And if you notice, it is runnier than yogurt, but by refrigerating it before you strain it, I find that it helps to keep it more of a consistency that doesn't separate into a liquid whey and kefir. One important note is don't wash the jar. These jars have been creating kefir for the past 6 months or more, and I haven't washed the jars once. The reason is that the starter culture has coated the jar, and when you add fresh milk to it, it will come to life and create the kefir, I would say, in a better way than if you had a clean jar to start with. When you start from new grains, let's say we take the grains that are in this jar, and if we put them into a jar with fresh milk, let it sit at room temperature. So I'll just demonstrate that here with this jar. So basically, if you're getting grains, you may get them with some milk at the same time. But let's say we put a heaping tablespoon into our jar. It will be refrigerated if you're using already constituted grains. And so what we want to do is we want to take our milk, and whole milk is best because you're getting all of the nutrients with it. You can do it with pasteurized milk, I believe. I myself have not done that ever. Of course, raw milk is going to give you an exponentially greater benefit from the amount of good bacteria that are in it. So we'll just fill that jar up with milk. I prefer to do milk that is fresh from that day's milking, but of course you may not be able to get that fresh of milk. So if it's cold already, just let it sit out. It'll take a little bit longer if you're starting with cold milk, but you want to get it to about that 72-degree room temperature where the kefir will slowly build up a curd throughout the whole jar. I do like to put the cap on and let it seal. If you are wanting to let more air into it, you can use a rubber band and some cheesecloth or a paper towel or a kitchen towel. One thing to watch for is that as it gets warmer, you will have expansion. And in this case, this jar was full and it was taking longer to culture. And so when I left it out, you'll notice if I open this up, it's seeping out already. So it's been fermenting and creating gas and expanding. So I've got to be careful when I go to strain that I don't spill it all over the place. Leave a little headspace. If it seems like it needs to burp, kind of like making pickles or something, you just unscrew the cap, let some air in there, and screw it back on. A couple of things to watch for. I would say it would take 3 to 4 days at least to get a new fresh batch started. You just don't touch it, just leave it. If you think that it has gone too far, if it gets to a point where it separates, like this one, so the next batch is actually going to turn out more of the way you would like it. If your house is warmer, like say 80 degrees, you'll notice that it may turn faster and you have more separation. If you can keep them about 72, you'll experience the kefir setting in 24 to 48 hours. So a couple things to watch for. I like to put a tag on the jar, make sure that if it looks like a milk jar, nobody's going to drink the milk if it's supposed to be waiting for kefir to culture. Also, keep the grains fresh. So if you decide to put your grains aside for a while in the fridge and not make kefir for a while, you should always have them covered with milk. If they are allowed to be exposed to air for a long period of time, they will start to decrease their effectiveness, and you might have to throw them out and get a new batch. So keep them covered with milk. I hope this overview helps you with your kefir journey. Kefir is an amazing probiotic and beneficial beverage for your gut and for revitalizing, especially after something like a round of antibiotics. If you are introducing young kids to dairy for the first time, kefir can also be a great way to minimize any reaction that an infant or toddler might have to dairy, because it is essentially pre-digested. So the fermentation that goes on while the kefir is culturing is breaking down the proteins and enabling your body to better handle the dairy itself. Let me know if you have any questions. I'd be happy to help. As I said before, we offer kefir grains as a starter. You can contact us at office@bartlettfarms.us, or you can sign up on our website, look for the kefir grain option. You can also obtain fresh milk from our farm. So if you're looking to get started on raw dairy, check out bartlettfarms.us and our options for delivery of raw dairy to your home.